Shoppers crave personalized experiences from the brands they love, and a great mobile app from favorite brand does exactly that. And that is where you need IMSHOP. Fast launch with any e-commerce platform, utilize advanced loyalty programs, retain customers with community, improve conversion with content, assist your customers anytime. Best thing about IMSHOP, you can launch a fully functional mobile app with all the benefits in just 6 to 8 weeks due to ready integrations. Join many retail leaders who already use IMSHOP. IMSHOP.AI, apps for e-commerce and retail. Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Philip Lapkowski, and I'm the host of the show. And today we're going to be discussing retail trends. I have a very exciting guest for you, Michelle Evans, who is the leader of Global Retail Insights for Euromonitor. Thank you very much for finding time for us.
Of course, pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you. If you can just give us a very quick bio about yourself and about Euromonitor for those who may be not familiar with what Euromonitor does.
Yeah, of course. So I'm in a role. It's called Global Lead of Retail Insights. It means I'm leading retail insights and engagements, clients, conferences, that kind of thing for Euromonitor. Euromonitor, if you've never heard of us, we're based out of London, global presence. I think what makes us unique is the knowledge that we have on the ground worldwide, married with our mixed methodology as well.
Cool. And you have you're an author, so you're writing a lot of different articles, and I know that I see you mostly on different retail conferences around the world. And I want to start with one of the topics that is, I think, really, really vital today for the online commerce. And so the question will be like, does the online commerce rely mostly on AI-driven discovery today rather than search-driven discovery as it used to for decades?
Yeah. So, obviously, if we look at where e-commerce is right now, I would say it's still driven primarily by traditional search engines, but we're seeing a fast uptake of these Gen AI platforms, Gen AI search. And I think in some ways, probably faster than a lot of people expected. We can look at some of our research to point to this acceleration. First off, we have a consumer survey of 40,000 consumers that just wrapped up in the last few weeks. And we see Gen AI is the fastest growing um, source of influence for consumers when they're shopping. So it's up 8 percentage points over last year. So that's pretty big when you think about a global number like that. And it enabled it to leapfrog social media influencers. If it continues on this same trajectory, it will likely leapfrog also many of the sources of information that brands control directly over the next year. And then we also have traffic referral data, so kind of mapping where shoppers are going. And we saw, in terms of AI driven referrals, a 304% increase from January to December last year, versus all others saw a 40% increase. So though Gen AI referrals only make up about 3% of traffic today, it is fast growing, and certainly, driving consumers to shop in a different way. Of course, this is, unfolding differently across categories. When we look at it, and I'm looking just at the FMCG universe in this case, but areas like beauty and personal care and consumer health are seeing a higher share of Gen AI searches than other categories. And this is for a couple of reasons. First of all, these are categories that have high online sales volume, but they're also intent rich, categories, high consideration. So a consumer might go to the platform and say, help me find the best moisturizer to help my eczema, as an example. So, AI really excels in those categories that have that long tail of product discovery and a lot of claims as well, and those kind of benefits. So we're seeing sort of that greater shift happening in those areas first.
Okay, yeah, it's very interesting. So, how do you see the storefront changing in the coming 3 5 years? Then, uh, with this trend happening, like how will retailers adapt to it?
Yeah, so I think the idea of, how you shop online is rapidly evolving, especially off the hill or on the heels of, AI discovery and search changing. So I think some of the ways or the clearest ways it's probably going to change is AI influence or infused discovery, more immersive engagements for shoppers, greater and more intense personalization, and really also operational intelligence, that efficiency play. So, winning storefronts of the future, I think they're going to shift more of that purchase decision, or more to move that purchase decision more to like the moment of inspiration. So this is certainly accelerating with Gen AI, but it's also happening when you think about in the last few years with commerce being embedded into content, into social platforms as well. It's really, commerce is starting to unfold when a consumer first comes across a product. That's becoming the first moment of inspiration. And Gen AI is certainly going to move us even more in that direction, and kind of collapse that funnel even further. And then I think, in terms of the immersive piece, I think you're going to see even more shoppable videos, more gamification, live shopping, virtual reality, conversational commerce, all of that trying to bring that more kind of human element into the e-commerce experience, more of that emotional pull and drive that, shoppers, or that still drive shoppers to go in person to stores. And then lastly, I mentioned that hyper personalization. I think this is a key piece where, Gen AI could enable, individualized landing pages and tailored product recommendations, more predictive modeling. And I think consumers are increasingly demanding that you know them, and know what they want, and know what they might shop. And I think Gen AI is going to open a lot of those doors.
Yeah, very interesting. So you think that one segment will be its own funnel. So if the end goal is like one person is a segment, a particular
Mhm.
person is a segment. So this is the end game of personalization. Then it will
Yeah.
also imply its own funnel. Like where do we find this consumer? What kind of message
Mhm.
do we translate, and where do we land this
Yeah.
consumer on our website? Right.
Yeah, and I think Gen AI really unlocks those doors, both from, an operational efficiency standpoint, and also just, the level of personalization that you can provide. Clearly, you have to have your data house in order to do that. And, there's tech hurdles as well. But I think we're going to move faster in that direction for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you already see like best practices maybe from some of the retailers that are already doing this and living this reality?
Yeah, I think in terms of retailers that are leaning in a lot in this area, I think the biggest ones like Amazon and Walmart are certainly making some of the biggest investments. And they have, both their own proprietary shopping agents, and Rufus for Amazon and Sparky for Walmart. And I know Walmart has talked more so about making Sparky like this holistic shopping agent. They've talked about individualized uh, web pages for shoppers. They've talked about, Sparky being able to shop on your behalf and really know you and create a shopping list. We've also seen a lot of activity, like if I think, outside the biggest players like that, like Zalando has done quite a bit with Gen AI, where they're, you first saw it with like the chat functionality, and the idea of using that more kind of natural language, or that ability to talk to consumers more naturally, where you could ask, or tell the chat, I have a wedding in Tuscany this summer. What would be a great dress to wear, or that kind of thing. So that's leading to that personalization. So those are just a few examples. Obviously, quite a bit of activity out there today.
So you were in your articles, you were also touching on the topic of e-commerce profitability and can e-commerce actually become profitable.
Yeah.
So what is your take in 2026 on this?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting, idea when you consider. Obviously, e-commerce has been, the growth engine in retail. If we look at our forecast data over the next 5 years, 75% of retail's growth is going to come from e-commerce. But profitability has been a different struggle altogether. So Walmart, which up until this year was the number one retailer globally, only a year ago posted their first profitable quarter with e-commerce. I think that was last April or so. And they have scale. They have scale unlike anyone else besides like an Amazon. I do think that profitability is within reach. But really only if retailers fundamentally sort of re-injure how they drive discovery and engagement and operational efficiency for that matter. So the idea of growth at all cost is over, and profitability really hinges on, how do we unlock the potential of these new technologies? So I think one of the things that's coming down the pipeline very fast is reimagining product discovery in this Gen AI era. So how do you optimize for that new search experience? Because it won't be about keywords anymore. It will be about the user's intent with the message. How do you embrace driving, more engaging experiences online? So, like what I just mentioned with AR, VR, live shopping. Obviously, not all of this is relevant for all categories, but where can you bring those technologies in to bring your purchases, your category, your products to life? And I think, Gen AI plays a big role when you think about customer service, that that technology can really help to close that gap between that human and bot experience, and also just drive obviously greater efficiencies, but also greater personalization because of what it can do with the data that you're collecting. And I think, that kind of dovetails into the idea of building loyalty as well, and driving that personalization to boost long term, retention and conversion as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So the long problem of a lot of e-commerce and omnichannel retail companies is the capital investment and operational investment that those companies needed to do in like in this huge marathon that everybody are running. So you need to be better, then you need to improve the landing
Yeah,
pages, you need to personalize, and it usually
yeah,
took a lot of software as a service companies around retailer to actually implement and then pay the capex for the investment and then the operational cost to actually have all of this
yeah,
architecture around them. With AI, it all becomes cheaper, faster, and a lot of those retailers, if they're fast enough, then they can leverage the AI instruments to actually start
yeah.
doing it themselves, and that can make the P&L of their business much more effective, right?
For sure. I think just operationally how you drive it for sure will improve with Gen AI. I think a big issue for all players is it just remains that delivery and last mile and returns. Those are obviously heavy cost, and you continue to see day after day, the WalMarts and Amazons of the world just upping expectations, offering 1 hour delivery in some U.S. cities, 3 hour delivery. I think Walmart promises 3 hour to 95% of households. So that's a piece of the puzzle that I think we'll still be working to solve. But I think what you're speaking about is right on, and Gen AI opens a lot of those doors.
There's an interesting conversation going around about would e-commerce look the same with AI agents? Because
Mhm.
like what we already discussed, like if you're searching for a specific like a cosmetics product and you're asking your prompt to the conversational AI verbally or as a text. And
Yeah.
do you need a front? Do you need a catalog? Do you need a product listing in that sense? So, what is your take? Will agentic AI change how the storefront look like and reshape the digital shelf?
Yeah, so, I think moving forward, if you think about it from the perspective of a marketer, you're no longer just selling to humans, you're also selling to a bot or the algorithms that help to guide their decisions. I think structurally, probably a lot of it stays the same, right? Because ultimately, you have to have those product catalogs, your product information, your attributes, your pricing, your availability all have to be, known or readable for these AI machines. So it has to be clean and consistent, and just ready to be digested. So, I think what it is more so fine tuning how that information probably appeals or appeals to the AI bots. If you think about kind of these early days up until the fall of last year, much of this was just organic Gen AI search. And so the players that did very well in that were the Amazons and the eBays of the world that, are marketplaces, huge volumes of product. You think about the Amazon page, it's incredibly structured, it's incredibly dense. And AI bots eat that up. So that's what you have to consider. That's what we're sort of shifting towards. Something that I've talked to our clients about that's come up in conversation is this idea of, well, what does brand equity mean in this era? And I think the biggest thing is brand equity doesn't equate to AI indexability. So if you can't get those things right that I just talked about, if your content's not machine ready, if the brand data or the data around your brand isn't structured well, if you don't have kind of a few digital signals out there sort of pointing to these bots, then it may not, your products may not come up in these searches, even if you are the number one player in skincare, wherever you operate. Now, if your next competitor or someone down the list is able to check the boxes and do all those things better than you are, that could likely help them to gain share. So there is a balance, right? We're still selling to humans, but increasingly, bots are going to be playing a role in surfacing information.
Yeah, it's very interesting because, like, in the end of the day, still, even if the AI gives the answer that your product, your brand is the answer to the prompt, then
Mhm.
um, you need to be ready with this emotional part that you said about in the beginning. Like, the emotion should be there. And what do you think about this? Like, how the brands can actually change their strategy to evoke this emotion in digital area as well as they do in the physical.
Yeah, you kind of have to almost walk a tightrope between the two. I think what's interesting is how important DTC could possibly becomes in this era, just because that is a place where you control the messaging. You can obviously lead with more structured content, but you also control the narrative around how your brand appears, and how you're feeding the engine.
Yeah, that's really interesting because yeah, a lot of companies were placing their bets mostly on selling through marketplaces. This is was the fastest way to grow, of course.
Yeah.
But DTC becomes so much important in this new area. Um, when it comes to like Gen Zs and how they're shopping and
Mhm.
what what this loyalty to the brand, this brand perception means to them. What trends do you see? How does this affect retailer strategies these days?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways I have about Gen Z is that they really expect brands to earn their loyalty and to continue to earn their loyalty. So you're kind of on a treadmill with them, trying to win them over. So unlike previous generations, they do tend to be a bit more value driven and consider they came of age during a cost of living crisis. Like I said, their loyalty tends to be a little bit more fluid and they're more participatory in nature as well. So, what that means is, they really, if we think about it a different way, they really want to engage with brands that offer value and are purpose driven. So they're more inclined to, align with those brands that they see aligning with their own values, and they really tap in or desire that idea of social responsibility and authenticity as well. They don't want the marketing messages around this. They want to see your company really walking that or walking the walk, I guess. And then I think experiences as a differentiator. I think we saw this come to be a bit with millennials for sure. But I think Gen Z also expects the more seamless and personalized and sort of fun digital shopping journeys. There's some reports out there that Gen Z is, bringing the shopping mall back to life. So brands that can provide those stronger experiences can build those connections with Gen Z. And then the last is this kind of community orientation that they have as well. So they like being part of communities, of fandoms, of creator ecosystems, where they look at the engagement as more important than the actual transaction. And part of what plays into this too is how they're influenced by peers and creators. So clearly, social media has been around, for 15 plus years, and has had an impact on other generations as well, like millennials. But really, this shapes a lot of how Gen Z views the world, and they, onboard, the creator recommendations as well, and they do. It's not about what a brand posts on Instagram or TikTok. It's really about those authentic interactions and storytelling from creators themselves that they connect with. So overall, Gen Z is really emphasizing the authenticity, that emotional connection, in alignment with personal values.
Yeah, that's very interesting because what we see also as a trend here on the podcast throughout recent interviews that we had with several brands is that they're creating their own communities in their mobile apps because they're
Mhm,
saying that from a social media, all of the platforms like Facebooks and TikToks of the world, they
mhm,
move to being this kind of like um, um, emotion media, not a social media. So you're not feeling connected to anybody personally. Doesn't matter like
yeah,
who do you have in your friends list. You're not following your friends so much anymore, or whom you're subscribed to, rather than the algorithm feeds you
mhm,
what it thinks suits you best. And this is what hooks us into those platforms. So that's good for the platforms and probably, but people are missing this community feeling and actually sharing content
mhm,
on a
mhm,
on a topic that everybody can share. We recently had a brand from UK, Lemure, and another brand from UK, Friend of Dorothy, who one is a supplement brand, another Lemure is an equestrian brand. So they both created those communities in their mobile apps, and they're saying that the most loyal community members are actually visiting their mobile app 40 times a day. And we're
oh,
talking
wow.
about e-commerce brands here. So 40 times a day for for a mobile app that is basically an e-commerce mobile app with the community functionality is insane.
Yeah.
It's a dream come true for any for marketing person.
Yeah, and I know, brands definitely leverage that community for that sort of co-creator moment as well, right? Like getting
Hmm.
that live real-time feedback on maybe what they're launching or what clothes they should send to production, that type of thing as
Yeah.
well.
Very interesting. So you said about this differentiator for like DTC versus marketplaces.
Mhm.
What kind of balance do you see as an optimal balance in the coming years for brands selling on DTC marketplaces, social media?
Yeah, definitely the go-to market strategies of brands have become more complex. In the e-com era, like you just named it, marketplaces, DTC, retailer sites. There's a volume of social media as well. I miss so there's a whole volume of places where you can sell your product. I think it's really an more individualized decision based on the types of categories that you sell into, and where you operate in the world, because there's going to be user preferences. But if you take for an example someone like a Nestle, who has one of the highest online share penetrations, and take their US operations, if you look at where they're selling into, so like Purina, their number one retailers of pet specialists, which is Chewy. If you look at a couple of their food brands like Stouffer's and Gerber, their number one retailer is Walmart, which does well, obviously, in grocery. If you look at its espresso brand, its number one retailer is itself through DTC. So clearly, what they're doing is, optimizing for the category being sold and how consumers like to shop in those particular markets for those products. Now, we've talked a little bit about some of, the changes that are coming down the pipeline. And I think this is going to change, or could potentially change, the retail models, or adjust, or force brands to adjust their go-to-market strategies. We haven't talked yet about this idea, but marketplaces obviously have been the growth engine for retail e-com, for the last decade plus. But we do have growing trade protectionism, unfolding, that's making life more challenging for cross-border marketplaces and third-party sellers that rely on them. So there are definitely some headwinds there. And then you also have Gen AI platforms, and this is early. If I think about if I use an American analogy, like a baseball game, there's 9 innings. We're in the first inning. A lot of this is just starting to take shape, and will probably look a lot different than it does today in 5 years from now. But if Gen AI platforms, they're going to try to monetize in some way, right? And they may go the advertising route. But if they do try to own the transaction, then that would effectively undercut the biggest advantage of marketplaces. So that's a challenging play right there. And then, we talked a little bit about DTC. I do think DTC in some ways becomes more important than Gen AI era. Maybe not, it could certainly be a sales channel, but at the very least, it's a more important marketing channel, in order to surface your products. And there was recently, OpenAI's ChatGPT has been in the news a lot, as it relates to their evolving strategy. And they're deciding, it sounds like they're deciding right now that they're not going to try to own the transaction because of the complexity in it, and getting all that lined up. But they still have partners. And so Shopify has announced that it's going to enable checkout for its merchants. It's still kind of in the app experience, though it will still go through the Shopify platform. But when you think about it, that could be a boost for a lot of DTC sites, that are built off the back of Shopify platforms, or at least enable them to play better in the Gen AI era as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it sounds very familiar. Some years ago we were discussing the same about Instagram is testing checkout, and then
Mhm.
TikTok Shop is going to ruin everything else. Nobody wants to
Yeah.
Shopify anymore because TikTok will be the place where everybody will shop. So I think that those trends are coming and going, but we still see that DTC for many purchases remains a place where people want to be convinced, or they want to have this emotion about of the brand.
Yeah.
And we never know what kind of shape the AI solutions will take in terms of like how can they evoke the emotion, how can they convince, give us the all the conviction, sorry, that we need inside of the platform itself. We don't know that yet, but from what we see today, it sounds very familiar to what we thought will happen with the social commerce.
Yeah, and I've thought back to those days as well, kind of the start and stop around social media. Meta would try to roll out with its platforms and then roll back. But at the same time, when you think about, ByteDance platforms, TikTok and Douyin in China specifically, they've made a lot of headroads. So, we're looking at them, in our Chinese data, they're the number one online retailer for beauty and personal care, as an example. They have 42% share there, grew 200% over the last, I think that data since early 2022. So phenomenal growth, and just globally, they're the number four retailer now. So, they've been able to drive that through their own marketplace.
Yeah. Do you see any trends happening around live commerce? Because there was China is the birthplace of the live commerce. They're making
Mhm.
huge numbers over there, but in
Mhm.
none of the Western countries, this trend really took off. Do you see this happening in coming years?
Yeah, I think, it's a way of life in China at this point. If I recall some of our one of our consumer surveys, there's a question we ask, have you executed a live commerce, or like a live shopping purchase, a live streaming purchase in the last, I think it's 6 months, we say. And it's something like two-thirds of consumers in China have. And even if you break that down by age group, it's over 50% across basically all, from 30 to 60 plus. So it's, though it might be higher with certain age groups, over 50% from both young professionals to grandmas is pretty professional, or pretty pretty impressive, I mean. But you don't, you obviously don't see that somewhere to the same degree in the US. But I think, the live shopping is really running off the back of, it's TikTok driving it, right? Which we've seen. They've done impressively well in Southeast Asia. They've had strong uptakes in the US, UK. I think they came in, what was it? Was it 2022 or so? They just launched last year, I think, in 5 or 6 more countries. So if I off the top of my head, I remember Italy, France, Brazil, Mexico, and I know they just announced more countries as well, that they're gonna be going into this year. So certainly, the wind is at their back, and they're driving that kind of growth. And we do have estimates as it relates to sort of social commerce sales and live streaming sales. And, we do expect, it's, I think for live streaming over the next 5 years, it's certainly a double digit CAGR growth. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it is double digits.
Interesting. Okay. And just to wrap it up, is omni-channel strategy still high on a priorities list for retailers, or this is already an old topic and omni-channel is not important anymore?
Yeah, I would hope at this point I don't hear the word used a lot. I think it is probably more sort of embedded in the strategy, where it's not so siloed in thinking about store versus online. but weaving that together. Obviously, it's become more complex. It's not just bringing together your website and the store. We've talked about, these other channels as well that you need to be selling through. I know there was, chatter in the industry in the last couple years as it relates to omni-channel. That looked at it more from more of an operational standpoint, where you should be thinking about it more from the consumer standpoint. But the long and short of it is, I think for any retailers and brands that are probably at the top of the list, I think this is well integrated at this point.
Yeah, yeah, but I agree that it really adds to the. So it's an ongoing process, becoming more omni-channel because there is just more channels. So
Absolutely.
to keep up with the omni-channel, you have to integrate all the new channels. So
Yeah.
that's the challenge, probably.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you very very much. We touched on, I think, all of the hype topics that everybody are discussing these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting, very interesting data. So we will leave the link to your LinkedIn profile in the description to this video. So everybody, please go check Michelle's profile and subscribe, because you share a lot of valuable information and articles over there, and it's very very insightful all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to join you on the podcast. Very interesting conversation today.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button if you like what we discussed today. And I don't have my usual lighting on today, so if you're viewing us on YouTube and it's super dark here, yeah, yeah, until before it becomes too dark, we'll wrapping it up. Thank you very much, guys. So have a good one. Keep in touch.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.